Hey there, Christopher. Uh, there's it feels a bit incomplete, and I'm sure a lot of viewers are going to also come away with that impression. And I think the best thing that I can do for you here is give you a few pointers about how you could take this a little bit further. I mean, yeah, if you're intending to have a very minimalistic approach, then that's a cool idea, but I'm sure that you were aiming for something fuller ultimately. So let's talk about how you could possibly do that, all right? And I'll also throw in a few tips that I have shared before or that, that are maybe relevant just in terms of completing your orchestration that you might want to change. Okay, so starting off with the whole idea of the tied grace note. In other words, the same exact pitch but starting slightly before the beat. All right, so there are two problems here. First is that you have a tie and you have an accent on both notes, right? So, like, if you're accenting the first note but it's tied, then why do you accent the second note, right? And then the other thing too is that usually when you have a grace note of any kind, the articulation of the principal note, the big note, is going to be realized by the attack of the grace note, right? So you don't really need to put articulation on both notes usually, unless they're different from one another, right? But in this case, it's a tie, so it's the same note. Now, I've commented on some other evaluations that when you come in early, basically what this is just saying is to come in early, and it kind of throws off the timing of the rest of the orchestra. They're hearing it slightly ahead of the beat, and there are people in the orchestra that are already calculating when to come in at a slightly earlier time or later time or whatever because of where they're seated, right? So, like, people in the back might be timing their attack a little bit differently than the people in the front, right? Because of just the way that noise travels and everything else. So I would say don't accent both the grace note and the principal note, and don't tie the same. Don't have tied pitches. Like, this is fine. Here you have an F double sharp going up to a G sharp. Now, I'm noticing another thing too in here, and that is just the barrenness of the of the scoring, right? So we've got a B octave here, first violin and trumpet, and then flute family coming in with xylophone and violins going B up 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 up. Yeah, so it just very very kind of barren landscape whereas in the orchestration things were a little bit more filled in, right? There was the connotation of an E note in there because of the grace note that was slurring down to the lower B, right? So that's part of it. And then there's also the G sharp, which was close to the B, and it gave it a character, it gave it that real character of the major third coming through along with the dominant in the chord, right? So when you place the major third way, way low like this, then it kind of takes away that bite, right? So you might want to fill this in a little bit, like you might want to back up some of your violin scoring here, maybe doubling by winds. You might want to have second violins playing that this part right here, but right up next to your first violins. And then right in here, I like the way that you vary this. You've got the flute family plus trumpet plus first violins, and then here you drop the flute family and you add the second violins. And I'm just a little curious why the second violins are not active at all through here, or violas kind of doing anything in the middle, right? Then there is a lot of activity going on in here in our timpani, and then I feel it sort of drops off, right? It's almost as if like it gets to the end of the page and then it doesn't go any further. So, yeah, I mean, it's an interesting idea to have this really active timpani going on an octave above the double bass, and then joining with a double basses, and then you go to pizzicato here, and I mean, I could see why you would sort of drop out, right? But and then there's like another issue here, and that is you've got your percussionist playing castanets in here, and then you're jumping straight to xylophone and then right back to castanets. So it's better to have two separate percussionists, right? One playing castanets, one playing xylophone, because castanets are, at least the ones that I remember seeing from spending a lot of time around percussion sections when it came up, it's basically like a castanet attached to a board. Rarely is the player playing it in the palm, although there are some players who have kind of developed that technique, and which is I'm sure is better. But yeah, there's just really not enough time. You're either assuming that the player has time to put down their mallets and pick up the castanets or castanet board, or they have the castanet sort of sitting in the palm of their hand and they're playing xylophone at the same time, right? There's just no time to change between instruments. Okay, this is easily doable for bass clarinet. This is, it's, I mean, it's doable, but like it would probably be easier to go second bassoon playing the E octave, and then the first bassoon is coming in and overlapping, right, and jumping up, and then the second bassoon is coming in again. That just is an easier way to divide this. Remember, one of the criteria in my orchestration lesson was about the accompaniment figures covering a wide range, and here we're seeing like a very wide range, covering the bass register, the lower bass register, the upper bass register, and the tenor register of the bassoon, and then just jumping back down into the bass register. And I mean, there are bassoonists who can do that all day long, but is it a very musical decision, right? In terms of the of what the players can do and how elegantly they can pull something off. This is kind of fun in here. The tuba coming in and playing unison with the bassoon and then going up the octave. Actually, probably would be easier to reverse these, right? To have the bassoon playing the higher note, the A, and the tuba playing the lower A, and you just get a much firmer kind of an octave right in there. Okay, and I really love the whole idea of the bass clarinet being the bass right in here. Okay, that is kind of fun. Yeah. So I'm assuming that this is bass clarinet transposing down an octave, right? That is, it's sounding down an octave rather than down a ninth, because these E's are obviously in the key signature. All right, and then going forward, this is kind of fun, the castanets and so on. But once again, we have like kind of lack of filling in of the functions that are in the piano part, right? So like we've got no G sharp as a kind of a harmonic reference to the fact that this is an E major chord, right? And we're also missing that clash of the F double sharp grace note kind of like swooping in there. Yeah, and then this is a little bit better. Tuba and bass clarinet playing, I'm assuming that this is in octaves. And yeah, just a little bit of support from below. And okay, so here's the problem that you've got right in here. You've got trombone and bass trombone playing these Fs, right? And then you've got this dancing stuff going on, tuba and bass clarinet and so on, and this sort of trading off to, you're going F, E, and sort of the two are kind of clashing over each other, and you've got one or two oboes. You didn't mark atu or adue, so I don't know how many oboes that is. If you're going to have this much brass, it would be better for it to be a trumpet, a trumpet solo rather than an oboe solo. Do you know what I mean? Just because the oboe does not have the same amount of strength over this much going on below it. Now it might sound fine in your mock-up, but that's not. Mock-ups do not always tell you the truth about what is going on. Now, here on the next page, we've got what appears to be an octave going uphill. So, yeah, that is, if the bass clarinet is really an octave lower. And then this changes into like two octaves apart, right? We've got oboe and clarinet in unison, and that's fine. And then we've got the bass clarinet. If this is octave transposition, then this is two octaves below. So one of the things that you have to be careful about, especially with bass clarinet on the bottom in this kind of position, is that the kind of timbral peculiarities in the overtones become really, really pronounced. Like if you have bass clarinet and clarinet in octaves. So for reference for this, check out the spring rounds from Stravinsky's Rite of Spring. Just that bum 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 bum. That whole idea, where you've got members of the clarinet family in an open double octave apart from one another. And that, it is an unsettling sound, right? Rather than, say, maybe a jovial or festive one, right? This is very festive music rather than, well, I mean, depending on the festivity, it could be a sacrifice, right? We don't know. But yeah, it's supposed to have a savage sentiment. Okay, now right in here, I felt that, like, towards the end, the functions of the music were starting to come apart a little bit. Like the actual content of what was in the score was not necessarily being transcribed into the score that well. So I don't think it's fair for me to judge and say, hey, this isn't scored as well as it could be, or whatever. I feel it's a little incomplete going towards the end, right? Because, like, for instance, like the whole idea, that's just not really transcribed into the music at all. So, I'm actually wondering if, perchance you sent me an earlier draft by accident, right? And if you did, that's fine. I will re-record this. Okay, so. If you're out there, Christopher, and you're watching this and you're going, oh no, he got version A, and I was supposed to send him version Q. You know what I mean? Then I apologize for the mix-up. But this is what I got when you sent me your entry. So I'm happy to re-record this, revisit it, and stuff. All right. I normally wouldn't, but it's just that it really feels so much under construction here towards the end that I'm hesitant to evaluate it and to put it through the ringer of saying which criteria it did or didn't address, right? So anyway, I'm going to keep this short just in case that is the case with that, right? But I want to thank you very much, Christopher. If this is like your first effort at something this big, and you kind of didn't quite get out of the sketch mode, then I understand that. I respect it. I'm not going to criticize you for that. And just wondering if there's anything that the resources of the group can do to help you to fill things in a little bit more, and maybe watching some other entries will give you some really great ideas for the next orchestration challenge. Okay, so I will I will stop there, and thank you again for participating and being part of this, and for like being the first person to make any comments on any video, or any kind of to jump in and pitch in, and and you left some really great comments on my videos too. So I appreciate that. I appreciate you are one of the more involved Patreon supporters and Orchestration Online members, and I really appreciate that a lot. Sometimes people will leave a great comment, and it will really make me feel super, and just make me feel like everything has a lot more meaning to it. And but I won't get a chance to really respond. So I'm sorry about that. It's just people are saying great things more than I can go in and say thank you for saying that, or hey, I really appreciate that. But I just want you all to know that I am reading the comments, and I really do appreciate all of the feedback, all of the thoughts, opinions that differ from mine. That is totally fine. I'm not preciously in love with my own ideas all the time, that I don't need to defend them with a flaming sword or anything like that. So thanks to you, Christopher. Thanks to the patrons for supporting my opportunity to look at your score, and for all the website subscribers out there, all the members of the community. Why don't you just join me and come with me, and let's take a look at the first evaluations for the semi-brev group, which should be coming very, very soon.